So under item 3, we have an introduction into the UNGGIM, Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, the IGIF-H, and implementation case studies. So this item is really a taster item, as in the main face-to-face meeting next week, we have this as agenda item 16, and there'll be more detail next week when we are face-to-face. So first off, I'd like to welcome Catherine Kelm for first half of the presentation. Catherine is from the World Bank, and that is building partnerships. And then we will hear from Andy Coote and the Philippines case studies. So please, Catherine, over to you.
Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. You'll see from my title that I'm actually a land person. So I really welcome this opportunity to speak to the hydrographic community, because we're recognizing at the World Bank the importance of integrating the land and the marine domains, particularly when we talk about geospatial information, also the cadastre, especially in the fight against the climate change and the adaptation and the mitigation that many of our clients need to undergo, and especially in the East Asia Pacific region. So thanks again for this opportunity. I'm going to focus this discussion around building partnerships. I think it is important to understand how the World Bank works. And just beyond the World Bank, that also means other IFIs, international financial institutions, or the MDBs, the multilateral development banks. So for example, the Asian Development Bank. What I'm going to explain to you today is relevant also for those organizations. And we are organized by regions. I am part of the East Asia Pacific Region Sustainable Development Group. We cover everything from urban development, spatial planning, including marine spatial planning, disaster risk management, some of the resilience. That's the global practice I come from. What is important to understand is that the World Bank and other MDBs always work through the Ministry of Finance of each country. So we have almost 150 member countries, and the key entry point for any engagement with the World Bank is through the Ministry of Finance. The portfolio for each country is defined through what is called a country partnership strategy or country partnership framework. They usually operate from 5 to 7 years, and it sets out what the agreement is between the World Bank and a particular country's government, mainly the Ministry of Finance, on where the investment money will go. Again, we are a bank, a World Bank. Most of our engagement is through loans, highly concessional loans, and in some cases through grants. So you can see here an example from Mongolia that we just currently went through a process. You can find the information on the World Bank websites, and you can always find the country partnership strategy to look at. And so any hook you can find around geospatial information, the climate change angle will be in this document. And then how do we work with countries, and particularly how are we financing geospatial information and infrastructure? And it is a bit of a task. There are some investment challenges when we consider spatial data infrastructure. And that is because this relatively new infrastructure, information infrastructure, spatial data infrastructure is competing with very traditional infrastructures that have very mature and well-established business lines, for example, energy and transport. And while significant financing is needed, most of our clients have said it really is a challenge to convincing decision makers, particularly the Minister of Finance, to invest in the spatial data and in the information systems. And in particular, more evidence is needed to justify that financing. Coming out of some of these discussions, the World Bank then partnered with the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, UNGGIM, to come up with a framework which could be used by countries to reference. It's a guide for countries as they want to develop their spatial data infrastructures. And you can see here in this puzzle piece, the IGIF, this Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, was adopted in 2018 with these 9 strategic pathways that you see, and across these areas of interest of governance, technology, and people. So ensuring that it's not just about the data and technology, but it is considering governance and people aspects as well. Perhaps John Nyberg will explain a bit more about this in the next session. But we use this as our basis to work at the country level. And using the IGIF as the framework, we have developed a series of tools and templates to work with country partners, usually the National Mapping Agency. Now we're starting also to work with the hydrographic agencies to be able to go through a process to implement the IGIF, but actually end up with an action and investment plan, which can be used then within ministries, with the Minister of Finance, with decision makers to get the investments needed into that geospatial information management structure. All of these tools and templates are freely available for anyone to use. And they are available on websites, which I'll share with you at the end of this presentation. So the first step we do is we try to do a relatively rapid diagnostic. Where is the country today across those 9 IGIF pathways? It's done through a simple Excel table with a series of questions where countries provide self-scoring, and come up with just an initial baseline assessment, or perhaps what you would call a maturity assessment. Where is the country today? And we use that as a basis for a stakeholder meeting. It allows us to introduce what is the IGIF, bring across sectors, across ministries, across disciplines, both decision makers, but also implementers together, validate the baseline results. And that usually is the launch pad then to initiate and enhance coordination within the government structure, but also across the private and public sectors as well. The second step is then the strategic alignment to policy and business drivers. So what is going to capture the attention of the decision makers? What are the key challenges of the country, and where can geospatial information contribute to combating or improving the situation or the challenges? I'm going to the Mongolia case example that we just completed. It was actually around e-government, better citizen services. That was the link that allowed us to develop the plan for geospatial investment. But each country is different. With the COVID-19 crisis, health has been a driver in many of the countries. Disaster and emergency management is very big in East Asia Pacific region, as is the environment and tourism. So there's always some entry point where geospatial information can play a key underpinning role in developing and managing systems. The third step is the socioeconomic impact and the benefits. So we look across several sectors. You can see in the pink, from the land side to the marine side. In the yellow, you then see we drill down more into the specific use cases. And then finally, at the end of the process, what are the actions and investments that are needed to reap the benefits? And here you can see the example from Mongolia, where we looked at both public and private sector. So what are the impacts or the benefits? We tried to follow very strict socioeconomic impact analysis, where what is the evidence we use, what methodology do we use, so that the economists, we always have to bring economists into this discussion so that they are confident in our quantification of who are the beneficiaries and what are some of the value of the benefits that would come out of the investments. And we then put that into the World Bank infrastructure project model. And that's important because you need to compete with energy, with transport, with some of the more traditional infrastructure projects. This puts this into the language that economists and financiers can understand. So it's okay, the Ministry of Finance can very quickly get a grip and understand what investments are needed, what would be the benefits coming out of it, whether it's the return on investment, the net present value. All of these are where we as the geospatial community, the hydrographers, the cadastre people need to learn to speak the language of the economists as well. And finally, we come up with what is then the action and investment plan. Again, in Mongolia, it was around this geo-driven e-government. And then the financing was just provided for many actions and investments within this plan through our new digital development project. But each country is different, as I said. So it may be a climate mitigation project. It may be a disaster risk reduction project, a marine spatial planning project. So there's different entry points that we can use to help our clients get the investments they needed. And we also believe in partnerships. As I said, those 4 templates and all of the guidelines are freely available for countries and partners to use. Partners through the several UN agencies. Kartverket is the national mapping agency of Norway. The Germans are using this in several countries around the world. We also have focused a bit on knowledge and learning, and particularly capitalizing on the COVID-19 wealth and expansion of online learning. So we have used our open learning campus at the World Bank, which can be freely accessed. And we have come up with several training modules, learning modules around the IGIF, creating country level action plans. And now the 5th module, how to actually conduct a socioeconomic benefits assessment, is complete, and it is available now for others to use. And finally, here you can see this is, it's a rather difficult link. You can always feel free to contact me, please, if you want access to any of these templates, but they are available on the Open Learning Campus and also on our Korea office, the Korea office World Bank website. So I'll stop there. I'll go into a bit more detail, give a few more examples next week during our bigger session. But for the moment, I will stop there, and Andy will take over and talk a bit about our work, particularly in the Philippines.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And let me just very quickly run through the Philippines work that we've been doing. It's adopting the structure that you've already seen. But the important thing here is we're trying to integrate together the land and the hydrographic community. So there are a number of different use cases, areas where we can see there is considerable benefit, not only from implementing geospatial, but from bringing the marine and the land side together. And this is the first time that we've tried to do this. The examples of the 20 where we've done this in other countries, most of those are land-based. A few are marine-based, but none of them have tried to integrate the two together. So climate change underpins everything that the World Bank tries to do at the moment, and therefore we need to look at making sure that climate change adaptation and mitigation is a big part of what we suggest. As Catherine was said, we've got to influence decision makers both at the bank as well as in the country itself. You can see when you start looking across the land and water divide that this slide is quite busy, but it illustrates the fact that you need a large number of different geospatial data sets in order to be able to do good spatial planning and decision making, which is holistic. And that's what we're looking at, particularly in the Philippines. We want also to be able to integrate global data sets. And we can see that these are starting to become more widely available for a wider group of themes. And particularly, we're looking with the UKHO at whether, in fact, their global mangrove data set could be applied to the work we're undertaking in the Philippines. We have described already these various templates that we've put together, and we're working our way with the Philippines government through these various tools. For the starting point, we're using a diagnostic that's been developed by Gerald Wong from the UKHO, especially for the maritime environment. We recognise that the land environment questionnaire and parameters are not exactly the same as for the marine environment, although there are many things that are in common. So Gerald has put together this maturity roadmap. It's under the auspices of the Open Geospatial Consortium. What we try to do is not recreate things that have already been done, but to leverage best practice. We've looked at the IHO MSDI C17, which is in the process, as we know, of being revised. We've also looked at the World Bank experience from those 20 different countries where we've been working over the last 5 or 6 years, and to incorporate OGC standards. So we're not looking to reinvent the wheel here, we're looking to leverage best practice. The work that we've done in the Philippines has already uncovered a large number of marine use cases, and most of these, we believe, are actually integrated case studies which involve both the land and the sea domain. We've identified around about 50 use cases, and we'll talk about those in a bit more detail when we meet and discuss this in more detail next week. We think that the most important thing, and it alludes to what Catherine was talking about, is to be able to convince the Minister of Finance in a particular country. Therefore, we have to look for quantifiable benefits. Often when we're working in developing countries, there aren't the studies that have been done in order to be able to directly quantify the benefits. So we look often at studies that have been carried out in other geographies and use various techniques which are known to economists, which they call benefits transfer, in order to infer what the benefits might be to the particular country in which we're working. And this is one of the studies that we use to do that. And these are values at the bottom of the slide there in Australian dollars of some of the benefits that were calculated from the recent study there. We also use examples, and it's very relevant to where we're going to be next week, where good work has been done, and in this particular area, it's around marine spatial data infrastructure, and particularly marine spatial planning. So there is a very good and thorough study that's been done in the Hauraki Gulf around Auckland, and we look to pick up on the examples from each of those studies that we can apply in countries such as the Philippines. Also looking particularly at marine cadastre, because we believe there is a synergy between the cadastral challenges that there are on land and those in the marine environment. And this is an example from the United States, where the Bureau of Energy Management, working on renewable energy sources, particularly in offshore areas, has found that creating a cadaster at sea, which is very close, in fact, to what we might create in terms of marine spatial planning, is a very valuable tool, and one which can generate not only savings in terms of efficiency, but also additional revenues in terms of permits and increase use of the resources that are available in the marine environment. We look at existing studies as well. So we're looking at marine charting, where, going back again to New Zealand, a study was done in 2016, looking at a wide range of different countries and the benefits that have been seen from the implementation of marine spatial data infrastructure. And this study is something that we're looking to apply into the work we're doing in the Philippines. The next steps for the work in the Philippines is to finish this integration of marine and land maturity assessment. We'll then complete the alignment to policy drivers, and these will be policy drivers in the marine and maritime environment as well as in the land environment. Look to prioritize the marine and land use cases. There's a great deal of work that needs to be done, and it won't all be done within a single 5-year period of investment. If we look at the Korean example, they're now on their 7th 5-year plan of implementing spatial data infrastructure. So these are long-term investments, and we need to prioritize to fit in with what will be accepted by politicians. The assessment of the socio-economic impacts then follows from that, and we define the action investment plan, much as Catherine has described. So in summary, we're at a fairly early stage with Philippines at the moment. We've been very gratified by the support we're receiving from the partner agencies there, and we will report on more detail of this when we get together next week. So thank you very much. That's all from me, and I'll stop sharing and hand over to John Nyberg.
Yep, sure. Thank you. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how this kind of came to pass, and a little bit about the IGIF Hydro. So won't go into the details of what it's about. I think most on the call know, but it's a supplement to the IGIF that Catherine and Andy just referenced, that focuses on the marine domain. Part 1, if you want to get a good bit of detail on it, it was just endorsed last August by the UNGGIM, and Part 2, we expect we hope to have it endorsed this August, and that will really be a little bit about each pathway. And you saw that puzzle piece that Catherine put up a minute ago. So it goes through and discusses each pathway and how it applies to the marine environment. Also, just a quick note, we were recently accepted as a Decade of Ocean Science Action, and are working with them. We had a meeting last week on how to move forward with that. A little background, I was very fortunate to be part of a U.S. State Department Science Fellowship that focused on working with Kiribati, and wanted to note the very big help and thank the Pacific community. So the really was able to work at SPC and work closely with them, and that really informed how we would move forward on the implementation with the IGIF-H in Kiribati and with San's team. As part of the time in Kiribati, we went through a workshop, and Jervis, I hope to see you at World Hydrography Day next year, maybe. But we got to hear a little bit about what was happening in all of the member states at SPC and how they were moving forward with implementing national spatial data infrastructures. That was one day. So we learned a lot from both a Fiji implementation and an implementation that's happening in Tonga, and took a lot of lessons that we learned from both teams. Also on another day, then we sat through Fiji's implementation of the IGIF and got to see how they were doing it. And I think informed how we were able to put together the implementation in Kiribati. I just wanted to give a great big shout out to the mentor program. I think it was a really helpful in the lead up to this implementation, and there Son and I are together and definitely did all of this work as a team. In the lead up to the workshop, Son came to the UNGGIM meeting in New York, and I think got to give get a lot of background on how this is done, where it's coming from, and why it's important. He gave an excellent intervention to the UN at the meeting, and then was also part of the Information Congress at the UNGGIM. So I think Son got a lot of practice and really a lot of build up to the workshop that we then had in Kiribati. So I think that once we got to this point where we were going to talk about a national implementation of the IGIF and IGIF-H, it was really Son that put it together. He got all of the stakeholders together, and you can see a group of them here, but they came from every sector of geospatial management in Kiribati, and worked together. We worked for a couple of days on a plan and strategy for implementing the IGIF first, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but then into the IGIF hydro. So it was really, I think, important to note that it has to be really led in country by somebody that knows what they're looking for and has connections around the geospatial ecosystem in a region. And I was really just there for support, and Son and his team managed everything and came up with what the outcome. So in the end, they had decided to focus on 3 pathways. There are 9. I believe that in Tonga they decided to focus on 4 pathways, and I think Fiji might have decided to focus on a couple, not all of them as well. But in Kiribati, they decided to focus on these 3 pathways and are working on writing their national strategy on those pathways. So, we put together an implementation Gantt chart, and this is just a little screen grab of what it did look like earlier. And so they'll be working through those in the months to come. Also, a big outcome from the implementation workshop was the formation of a geospatial group in country. So they meet regularly, and it's part of the building partnerships and governance and institutions in the country. So they're working on this together as a team. So I think just a couple of takeaways. What did we learn from this experience was, I personally went into this thinking that we would do the IGIF hydro, and walk away with a plan for hydro, because that's where I come from and that's what I've focused on at the UN. But you really need to start at the top, and I think we learned that collectively in having the whole team in there to go through each sector. I mean, they had people that manage geospatial data for hospitals, the police department, finance. There were some people from their financial community. The office of the president was involved, and of course the hydrographic sector also. So we really needed to start at the top level and think about the IGIF as a whole, and then work down into the hydro side. The next thing is national leadership is absolutely critical. Son knows what happens, what's important in Kiribati, and the people in Kiribati inform those decisions and decide what to focus on. I think each implementation may be different. Again, that kind of comes from what's important in their country and how they want to implement it. And it seems like if it's implemented with a national perspective first, then it's really likely to succeed moving forward. As I mentioned, kind of as the path to the workshop, learning from others in the region was extremely valuable. It was really great to have a community of countries that had already implemented it and or had an implementation underway and have some similar experiences. So we were able to start, I think, running from what we learned from them. And last but certainly not least was working with regional organizations like SPC and the Hydrographic Commission was a critical part of getting where we have so far. And I think that, so these were just a couple of things that I thought that I really took away and probably didn't realize how important these things are before getting started. So I think that kind of concludes the presentation part, and I thought that might be good to take some questions if there are any.
Thank you, John. I don't know if Sion is online and wishes to contribute, but I know that he's got some technological tech issues there. So perhaps some just comments and feedback from myself. So basically, thank you to Catherine and to Andy and yourself, John, for your presentations. Really relevant, pertinent to what we're doing as the International Hydrographic Organization. If we consider Goal 2 of the IHO strategy, which is the increasing use of hydrographic data for the benefit of society, this is absolutely on the nail for that strategy goal. And part of that, the target is to apply UN guiding principles for geospatial information management to ensure interoperability and extended use of hydrographic data in combination with other marine related data. So this is definitely pertinent, relevant to what we are doing, the mission of the IHO. So I was quite fascinated to hear from Catherine the workings of the World Bank. A lot of things that I really didn't know and understand, and some acronyms there that I need to pick up on. And I think that's going to be, again, highly relevant to some of the conversations that are coming up for the IHO, the International Hydrographic Organization, in the future, as we seek to raise awareness of the value of hydrography and partner with, as I think it's NDBs, to achieve this goal too, in terms of country partners, strategies, framework. Definitely, there's a language there in terms of the economists to influence those decision makers. We're going to hear more about the Philippines use case, I think. So this is, as I say, a taster. and the actual implementation of the IGIF. And John, congratulations on the IGIF-H being the Decade of Ocean Science Action. I think that's hard won and well deserved. And we're looking forward for the face-to-face workshop for Sion to be here next week. So that's really exciting, because if you consider Kiribati and marine spatial planning and the amount of the real estate there for the EEZ is huge. So really pleased. I don't know if there's any quick questions. We're slightly behind time, but if there's any quick questions from anybody, otherwise, again, this is a taster and we're going to be face to face next week. And really looking forward to that meeting. Okay.
Adam, if I may,
Yeah.
I think I won't be at the meeting next week, but I think Son will be there and he'll be able to fill in, get to talk a bit more about it and his experience. So I think that'll be exciting for the group. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present on the project.
No, we were very pleased you could join us. Okay, so I don't think there's any questions. This is a taster, as I say, so we'll hear more next week. Thank you very much, Catherine, Andy, and John.